Welcome to In Dark Places, member FDIC. This week is the final episode of our Mothman series. As you may have guessed from our recent news stories, Mothman didn't just fade away into obscurity after the Silver Bridge fell in 1967. Sightings of the mysterious creature continue to be reported until this very day. This week, we'll be looking at some of Mothman's more recent sightings, and we'll get into that after the news.
This is your In Dark Places news correspondent, Mr. Haunted, with a story called Dead and Breakfast. In what appears to be some sick joke, the Facebook account for the longtime manager of Fall River, Massachusetts, Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, the late Leanne Wilbur, shared a post that has left friends and family in shock and wondering who would do such a thing. Wilbur passed away suddenly in early June, just days after closing on the sale of what is now known as the Lizzie Borden House. At 1:45 p.m. today, just a few weeks after passing, Wilbur's beloved cat, Max, also passed away. The two were inseparable, and Wilbur often referred to the elderly cat as her son. Wilbur's Facebook account posted, "Hello all, I am doing well in the place I am. Max is here and being the best boy ever. I wish to thank you all for caring for him until we were able to be together. I wish to thank you all for the love and energy you are sending. Love to each and every one." This is In Dark Places news correspondent Amy.
Australian TV viewers got a brief glimpse into a hellish ritual this week when a news broadcast suddenly cut to a satanic ceremony. The network was doing a segment on police dogs with the usual footage of various bureaucrats. Towards the end, however, the segment cut to 2 seconds of footage of a ritual that involved the words, "Hail Satan!" as posted online by ABC's Media Watch. The TV host managed to keep a straight face after emerging from the video mix-up. After a pause, she moved right on to the next story. It's not clear how Satan got sliced into the video footage.
That was Little Fish joining the broadcast team. Thanks, Little Fish. Good job. While Willow Creek is the gateway to Bigfoot country, Willow Creek, California. This is from ABC 10, John Bartell, on September 10th, 2021. Chances are, if you talk to just about anyone in Willow Creek, there's a pretty good chance they can tell you a Bigfoot story. Evidence of a mythical creature has been found all over Six Rivers National Forest. But if you really want to see that evidence up close and in one place, you'll find it in Willow Creek, the gateway to Bigfoot country. Talk to just about anyone in Willow Creek, and there's a pretty good chance they'll tell you a Bigfoot story. The recent sighting or evidence of the elusive creature are so prominent in this area because of the Patterson film. Chances are you have seen the iconic film on TV or the internet. Roger Patterson and Robert Gimlin recorded a 1-minute film of Bigfoot in 1967 just outside of Willow Creek, along Bluff Creek in the Six Rivers National Forest. The Patterson film gave a full-bodied moving image to the myth and legend, says Stephen Strufert, owner of Bigfoot Books. Strufert is one of many Bigfoot researchers in town who actively search for signs of Sasquatch. Stephen says the Patterson film is one reason he moved to Willow Creek in the 70s. It's just long enough to burn an image in your mind, so it never really went away for a lot of people, says Strufert. I might have seen one in the woods, I don't know. Things happened that were hard to explain. The other reason Strufert moved to Willow Creek is to be closer to the continued sightings and abundance of Bigfoot evidence collected in the area. For example, an entire room full of Bigfoot evidence, including the original plaster foot casting of Bigfoot taken at the Patterson film site, is located at the Willow Creek China Flat Museum Bigfoot collection. Heidi Johnson is one of the dockets at the museum. She says the Bigfoot collection is one of the main attractions in town, and researchers from all over the world have donated artifacts, pictures, castings, and event Bigfoot memorabilia. Everybody loves the museum and Bigfoot. I just hope nobody catches him, said Heidi Johnston. Catching Bigfoot is actually a real possibility around here, at least Bigfoot hunter Larry Wadsworth, who set up camp just north of Willow Creek. "I got a Sasquatch hunting permit so I can hunt that sucker," said Larry Wadsworth. Most Bigfoot hunters, like Wadsworth, are not here to kill Bigfoot. In fact, they need the hairy beast alive to collect the $5 million reward. "There is a lawyer in Oklahoma who put up $3 million and two private families that put in $1 million each," said Wadsworth. Bigfoot attracts thousands of people, just like Larry, to Willow Creek every year. In September, the town holds the annual Bigfoot Days, which benefits the whole town. Bigfoot is everywhere in Willow Creek. On the wall of the hardware store, at the local motel, and several restaurants. Most businesses adopted Bigfoot as their mascot, said Strufert. I don't remember his accent. Bigfoot may bring people to Willow Creek, but the real attraction around here is the natural beauty of the Six River National Forest. It is kind of an excuse for people to get outside. You know, maybe wear some camo and feel adventurous, says Strufert. Mothman sightings date back to the 1940s. This guy has got to be getting up in age. Could he be living out his retirement in the Chicago area? No one knows, but there sure are a lot of sightings in that area these days. These modern-day sightings near Chicago seem to have started on August 22nd, 2011. Here to tell us all about it, Mr. Haunted.
I'm from the southwest suburbs of Chicago. My wife and I travel into Chicago to take care of some business. On the way back, we took a cruise through my old neighborhood just to check it out and see what has changed. We were going down 63rd Street, going west, and we're coming to Pulaski Road. I then remember there was this huge Indian on the roof of this tobacco store. That's what it was when I was a kid. It's something else today. But on the northwest corner of 63rd and Pulaski Road. One time when I was a kid, I was on the CTA bus going east on 63rd Street when the bus came to a stop at Pulaski. I was looking out the window and noticed 3 teenage girls standing on the sidewalk right next to the bus. 2 of the girls were pointing up at this Indian, trying to show the third girl something, and they were all giggling. So I'm wondering, what are they pointing and laughing at? So some time went by, and then one day I went to the currency exchange right over there. On the way out, I decided to walk by the Indian to the same spot where I seen the girls laughing and pointing to see what it was they thought was so funny. Well, it turns out that if you look at the Indian from the exact spot his left thumb is sticking out, it looks like his thing is sticking out his pants. So when my wife and I were going to the Indian on August 22nd, 2011, at about 2 p.m., I decided to get a picture of this. I just got a new smartphone and wanted to check out how good the camera would work. So I got out of the car and went to the spot and took about 4 pictures of this statue. So we left and went home, and later on that night, I went to look at the pictures I took. When I was checking these photos out, in one of the pictures I noticed an object that was on the back side of the statue. At first, I didn't think anything of it. I figured it was a plane or something. But then just for the heck of it, I enlarged it. And it looked something similar to a bird or a bat. But then again, it didn't. So I have no idea what it could be. I was reluctant to send it because I figured there was some explanation for what it was. But then I thought it still qualifies as a UFO or something else because I'd never seen anything like it before and didn't know what it could be.
A possible Mothman sighting in Chicago, Illinois. These are the events as they happened on Friday, September 30th, 2011, in the area around Miller Park in the University Park neighborhood in Chicago, Illinois, approximately 1 block from the main campus of the University of Illinois at Chicago. Things began like any normal Friday night. I and a couple of friends were going to go out and have a few drinks at a local bar. As I got to my apartment, I jumped into the shower to start getting ready while my roommate went to her room to get ready. I finished and walked out of the bathroom to my room and started to get ready to head out for the night. As I started to get dressed, I heard my roommate scream loudly. I dropped what I was doing and ran to her room to see if she was all right. I walked in to see her cowering in the corner of the room, white as a ghost and shaking. She was babbling hysterically, saying that something was looking in at her from the window. I looked toward the window and I didn't see anything but the light coming from the other apartments across the courtyard. I asked what she had seen and tried to tell her that she might have been mistaken. We live on the 3rd floor of a 5-story apartment building, and there is nothing outside the window but a 30-foot drop straight down to the courtyard below. My roommate was hysterical and scared out of her wits. I took her to the living room and sat her down on the couch, and I then went to my room to put on a robe or a nightshirt since I was only in my underwear. My roommate didn't want to be left alone and actually followed me to my room and waited there as I put on a robe and joined her in the living room. After about 20 minutes of calming her down, she finally told me what she had seen in her window. She stated that she was getting dressed, and when she turned to face the mirror on her dresser, she saw a pair of orange eyes staring at her from the window. She turned around to see 2 brightly lit orange eyes staring out at her. These eyes were attached to a creature that was staring back at her through the window. My friend lost it and started screaming hysterically for the 3rd time and backed herself into the corner. She said she was filled with this overwhelming feeling of complete and total terror. She felt like the creature was looking at her as though she was prey. She said she felt like a rabbit that was about to be pounced upon by an eagle. I tried to rationalize with her what she had seen, telling her it could have been an optical illusion, or maybe it was the jitter from a week of hard studying. She dismissed everything, saying that she had seen what she had seen. As I sat there comforting her, my cell phone rang from my room. I got up and ran to my room and snatched it from my dresser top and answered it. It was my boyfriend and one of his buddies, and they were talking a mile a minute. It sounded like they were out of breath. I bet they were hysterical. As I tried to get him to slow down, I walked past my roommates, opened the door, and to my absolute horror, I saw a pair of glowing red eyes looking through the window right at me. They stared at me for about 3 to 4 seconds before whatever it was abruptly left. Like my friend, I totally lost it and screamed at the top of my lungs and sprinted into the living room. She was hysterical. My boyfriend was now screaming into the phone, "What's wrong? What's wrong?" Within 2 minutes, he and his best friend were pounding on the door of our apartment, followed shortly thereafter by one of our neighbors who had heard us screaming. Once we assured the neighbors that we were fine and that they did not have to call the police department for us, we shut the door, and I immediately lost it when my boyfriend held me. We told him what my roommate had seen in the window and that whatever it was had come back again. That's when I had seen it. He began to tell us that he and his buddy were on their way to our apartment to pick us up when they had seen what they described as a large bat with large glowing eyes. It was perched on top of a basketball hoop in the neighborhood park. They stated that it saw them and had alighted into the air with an audible whoosh. He states that there are about 6 people in the park, and all of them had seen it when it had taken off. He states that there was no way anyone could have missed it. It was about 6 to 7 feet tall, dark gray or black, and those eyes glowed with the intensity of 2 glowing ambers. He says that they saw it easily when it took off and headed away from the park, due to both the lights of the city as well as the nearly full moon that night. They lost sight of the creature after about 5 seconds, and that's when he picked up the phone and called me. He says that when they heard me screaming, they sprinted the block and a half to the apartment. Needless to say, none of us went out that night, and my boyfriend and his buddy stayed with us through the weekend. My roommate refused to go back to her room till it was well after daylight. She closed and locked the window and drew the blinds shut. She says that it's the only way that she felt secure to be in there after dark. I'm still very weary about coming home or going out after dark, even though I know I have to do it for both school and work. I hope that whatever it was sufficiently scared off by two insanely screaming college students. I hope that I never see it again. I don't think that neither I nor my roommate will ever be the same again after this. There is one interesting fact. My boyfriend told me when I saw him on Tuesday that a few students around the campus, UIC, had been talking about a large bat that some people had seen on Friday night. A lot of the people who spoke about it were spooked by it. I never figured that anything like this would or could be seen in a city as large as Chicago, or a campus as busy and bustling as UIC. It totally makes me wonder what it truly was, and if it meant us any harm. And then a third report of an unknown bat-like object was seen flying over Chicago. October 14th, 2011. I am currently attending university in Chicago, Illinois, and I wanted to respond to the informational flyers about recent events involving the large bat-like creatures. I was enjoying an evening with my girlfriend and taking a well-deserved break from my studies. We decided to go out and enjoy the unusually warm weather that we were having and go for a walk. As we walked toward a community park near the campus, we were talking about our classes when a commotion amongst a group of people caught our attention. As we looked toward the group of about 4 to 5 people, something caught my eye, and I looked up to see this thing fly overhead. It looked like a man. It looked like a man with wings. He flew about 10 to 12 feet above us and was perfectly silhouetted against the evening sky. In all honesty, it looked like an immensely oversized sugar glider, the kind I would see back home in Tasmania. It had the rough shape of a sugar glider, but its eyes were nothing like the soft eyes of a glider. They glowed red. We saw it for about 4 seconds before it disappeared from view. At first, I thought I saw a man in a hang glider, but it was one of those bloody eyes that made me think otherwise. I at first thought of ringing someone, but I didn't want them to think that I had gone crazy. To say that I was gobsmacked would have been an understatement. Anyone ever heard that term before? Gobsmacked? New one on me. So the sightings seemed to have eased off for a few years, but then, in 2017, the Mothman started to resurface. On April 11th, 2017, my wife's birthday. I'm writing this out after taking a day or two to really think out if I wanted to report this and to tell others what I saw the other night in Oz Park here in Chicago. I finally decided that writing this out and submitting it would be therapeutic to me and might hopefully help identify what it was I saw and maybe help someone else avoid the same thing. I live in the Lincoln Park neighborhood in the city of Chicago and live about a block and a half from Oz Park. When the weather is nice, I usually go outdoors and to the park to jog and walk my dog. The night of April 11th was no different. It was mild and the cold weather had finally subsided, so I decided to give the treadmill a break and go outside to jog and let the dog get some fresh air. As we came to the corner of Burling Street and Webster Avenue, where I crossed the street to the park, my dog began acting very peculiar and acted like she didn't want to go to the park. This is very strange, as usually my dog goes absolutely nuts when we are about to go to the park and has the time of her life running and sniffing. On this particular evening, she acted like she was mortified to cross the street and enter the park. As we crossed the street and came up to the area where the basketball courts are located and the start of the trail that goes around and through the park, my dog was practically being dragged as she resisted wanting to continue. After much effort, I finally got her to cooperate and began to walk. I started walking east toward the Oz Garden, a route that is my usual when I come here to walk or to jog. As we walked toward the garden, I noticed that many of the birds you usually hear in the park were all but silent, and that the only noise you could hear was the usual city noise from the surrounding neighborhood. As we rounded the sidewalk to head south, with the garden to my left, I heard what could only be described as the flapping of wings. I really didn't give it a second thought, as I assumed it would be some passing Canadian geese that I've seen in the park recently. As we came toward the clearing where you would find the baseball fields, something caught my eye, and what I saw still scares the crap out of me. I saw a large man, probably about 7 feet or taller, standing on the ground. It was solid black, but what really stood out were the large, and I do mean large, pair of wings that were folded behind him. These wings stood taller than the man by at least 1.5 feet and jutted out of his back. I could not see its face, as it had its face turned away from me, and probably didn't notice me at first. It finally turned and noticed me, and I saw the bright ruby red eyes that appeared to glow from within. It was at this time that it turned and faced me, and I got to see what it really looked like. It was about 7 feet tall, and instead of clothes, it looked like a giant half-man, half-bird kind of a thing. It reminded me of the character Bird Person from the show Rick and Morty, only a lot scarier. This thing stared at me for about 15 seconds, which felt like an eternity, and then a loud whoosh. It unfurled its wings and screeched very loud, and jetted into the air. These wings looked almost like bat wings, and they were at least 10 feet across from tip to tip. I felt like this thing could see right through me, read me, and knew what I was thinking, like it could stare right into my very soul. It was the most terrified I have ever been in my life. It rose into the air like a bullet, and I heard it screech once more before losing it from my view, and it rose above the trees and possibly the buildings. It was at that time that I realized that I had yet to scream or react in any way. I was just numb from my head to my toes. I finished my walk early and walked on, all the while trying to see if I could see it again once I got to the street. It was the scariest thing I have ever experienced, and it led me to look up giant mutant birds online, and eventually came to sites talking about similar sightings that other people have had, and eventually to where I could post and report my own sighting. I don't want you to think I'm crazy. I'm just a normal person who had a weird and strange experience. I do not abuse drugs or take any kind of hallucinogens or anything like that. I know what I saw was real, and that I saw it in Oz Park in Chicago, Illinois. I don't want publicity at all. I just want to tell my story and warn others who might jog or walk the trails of Oz Park. I never felt like I was in any kind of real danger if I did not provoke it, but I felt like this creature could have ripped me from limb to limb if I had approached it or threatened it in any way. Maybe it was passing through like the Canadian geese do when they are migrating. Either way, I hope that we never meet face to face again. Thank you.
This report comes out of Chicago, Illinois from 2017. I arrived for work at 2 a.m. at the Chicago International Produce Market, just off Damon, and as I walked across the parking lot, a bunch of guys, 4 or 5 of them, were staring up at the sky. I looked up and saw the biggest friggin' owl I have ever seen. I'm 6'2", and I'm guessing the thing was at least a foot taller than me. It was completely black except for having bright yellowish reddish eyes like a cat. It stood there for a minute or two staring at everyone before shooting up into the sky and disappearing. It made everyone feel very uneasy and only took off after some guys threw some rocks at it. It had wings on it like an owl, only bigger, and you could hear it flap those wings when it took off. It made this sound as it took off and flew away that sounded like a truck's brakes when they're burned out. It flew up and flew a wide circle, making that sound once more, and then flew off in the direction of the Stevenson Expressway. We stood around and looked for it for a few minutes, but it never came back. I'm reporting this because there's no way that this was an owl. It stood upright like a man, just really, really tall. I don't want to discuss this with anyone and would prefer to remain anonymous. I don't imagine anyone would believe me anyways. One of the guys I work with who saw this thing said that it would make him feel very uneasy, like a scared kid, and he was glad someone threw a rock and made it fly away.
On April 16th, 2017, in Chicago, I was hanging out with my boys and a few friends near the Humboldt Park community. As we talked about work and our families, we heard what sounded like a bird flapping its wings. One of my homies yelled out that he saw a huge barn owl over the road. We walked over there and saw what looked like a big owl. As we walked up onto it, this owl stood up on 2 feet and looked right at us. We saw what looked like a huge barn owl, except it was about 6 feet tall and really big. It had large glowing red eyes that were completely freaking everybody out. We yelled, and this thing took off into the air and took off toward North Avenue. This thing freaked us all out and scared all of our kids. And this one is from April 13th, 2018. Mothman seems to like springtime in Chicago. Hello, I discovered your website after doing some looking around on the web regarding flying creature reports. After reading through your blog, I felt comfortable to report what happened to me and my boyfriend recently in Milwaukee, Wisconsin. This occurred on April 13th, 2018 at about 10 to 10:30 p.m. We were parked in the parking lot in a nice dark place. My boyfriend looked up and totally freaked out when he saw a pair of large, glowing red eyes staring right back at him. I looked up and saw something standing in front of my car with 2 glowing red eyes. It made a chirping sound that we heard when we turned down the radio. When we moved, it put what looked like a hand on the hood of the car, and then we saw what looked like wings spread wide open. I panicked and turned on the car, which automatically turned on my headlights, and it lit up what looked like a large bat. It had black skin that looked like glossy, wet leather that shined in the light. It then screamed at us, pushing its head out and its arms back, and it flew up into the air. You could hear the wings flapping as it jumped up, and within a few seconds, it landed behind my car. Its body still able to be seen when I pressed the brakes and the brake lights shined. Both of us were screaming at this point when it flew back up in the air and landed about 6 feet from the passenger side door where my boyfriend sat. We wasted no time in trying to get out of there. As we backed up and whipped the car around, we saw it land in front of us off to the side of the car about 3 feet away. I honked my horn and turned on my brights, and it screamed again and flew up into the air. We screeched out onto the road, and my boyfriend said he saw it land again just off the road on his side of the car. We did not stop to investigate and floored the car to get out of there, and we saw something fly right over the car, lower than the lamppost, screaming as it flew out of sight. We got to my house and stayed in the car for about 15 to 20 minutes. I was hysterical and crying, and my boyfriend was shaking up. It took me another 30 minutes to get myself together and go drop off my boyfriend and drive myself back home. I have had repeated nightmares since then, and it's been difficult to sleep without the closet light on. My boyfriend says that he's had nightmares. I hope you believe me and that you don't think I'm crazy. It could not have been a large bird like some people seem to say it might be. I know whatever it was, it must have been intelligent. It's just a feeling that I have that tells me so. This one is from October 23rd, 2019. We were staying at the Edward Hotel in Rosemont, Illinois, for a wedding we were attending that was being held at the hotel. During the reception and dance, I stepped outside to smoke a cigarette and get away from all the noise for a few minutes. I took a walk toward the parking lot, smoking and checking my phone, when I heard a loud scream. It sounded like a woman screaming, so I looked up in the direction of where the scream was coming from, hoping it wasn't really a woman in danger. Next to the parking lot is a large field with some trees, but mostly a large vacant lot. I used my cell phone's flashlight to light the way and saw nothing except darkness. I walked over to the gravel path between the parking lot and the field, toward where my car was parked. And that's when I heard something like wings flapping, and something flew right over top of me, about maybe 7 to 10 feet above me. I could have easily thrown a rock and hit it as it flew over me and away. This thing was at least 6 feet tall and was solid black with large wings. It looked like a giant-sized bat as it flew over top of me. It was all black and kind of stuck out against the lights of the parking lot and the lights from around the area, including the gas station across the street. 3 other people saw it as well, including a couple who were walking across the parking lot as I heard them exclaiming about it. It flew toward the expressway and the BP gas station. This whole time it was screeching loud and flapping its wings hard, like it was trying to gain height. When I lost sight of it, it was about the height of the billboard across the street, still shrieking away. Now I know I had been drinking during the wedding and was a little buzzed when I walked outside, but I was as sober as a judge after seeing this thing. It was unnatural and was pretty much the scariest thing I ever did see. But I know for a fact that I saw it and those other people saw it. This one was on February 21st, 2020 at O'Hare International Airport in Chicago. I wanted to tell you about something I saw on February 21st at O'Hare International Airport. I work for blank as a security guard, and I was on duty at O'Hare International Airport and was assigned to do routine escorts for trucks that were coming in and out of the airport. Many of these trucks are there to deliver cargo going outbound on planes and are required to have an escort to and from their drop-offs. I was doing one such escort on that night at about 2200. That's like 10 p.m. I had escorted the truck to the unloading facility at the post office, and I was waiting on the truck to be unloaded. I stepped out of my vehicle to have a cigarette, and I saw something move out of the corner of my eye near the fence, and I decided to go see if it was someone trying to climb the fence. We had a few incidents in the past few weeks of people coming onto the airport grounds, either to sit and watch the airplanes come and go, or we've also had a few incidents of investigators coming onto the airport grounds in response to the multiple reports of the Mothman. We had been told to report these individuals and escort them off the grounds if we ever run into them during our shifts. I assumed it was going to be the same thing as before. We rode up to them to tell them that they were trespassing and then escorting them off the property. We have had our share of these sort of calls and knew to be firm but professional with them. I rode up to the fence and what I saw wasn't human. It looked like a very tall human, but it was solid black with glowing red eyes, and it had a pair of wings that were outstretched that must have measured at least 10 feet from tip to tip. I got out of my car and shined my flashlight at it. This thing screeched out loud. It almost sounded like the brakes on a train, loud and very high-pitched. It then turned back to me and flew straight up into the sky and took off like a bullet. I could see it as it took off, its wings flapping until it faded into the night. I heard it screech again, and before I knew it, it was gone, and I could not see it anymore. I drove back to where the truck was, and I told the people there at the dock, and they said that people had seen it at least a few times. I waited until the truck was ready and escorted it back and reported it to my supervisor, who told me that it was probably a very large owl. He did tell me to be careful in the future when I'm out at night, which I thought was odd. I know what I saw was not an owl, and whatever it was, it scared the living pee out of me. I am asking you that you please do not mention my employment. I need to keep my job in order to take care of my family, and I do not want people saying anything to me about this sighting. I need to make my money, and I also do not want to be made fun of by people here at work. All of these reports and a bunch of other ones can be found on Lon Strickler's website, Phantoms and Monsters. Here's the most recent one that he has posted on his website. Hello, Lon. I saw a post about a winged humanoid creature at O'Hare and found your name at the bottom. Okay, I don't know if it's the same thing or not. I live in Racine, Wisconsin. Yesterday, August 5th, 2021. At 8 a.m., I was in my backyard after returning home from work. Across the street from my backyard are two old churches, both with bell towers. Both also double as elementary schools. I looked up and noticed a gargoyle on the roof. All gray. Dark gray, but not as dark as described in the article, and no glowing red eyes on mine either. I will say, it looked like stone though, unlike the membranous wings described at the O'Hare encounter. However, given how close Chicago and Racine are, I thought reaching out was warranted. Anyhow, this had to have been pretty large, as I could see the wings quite clearly. It was motionless. Now at the time, I thought nothing of it. Old churches used gargoyles to ward off evil all the time. But it hit me last night while working that I don't remember the church having gargoyles before. And why would it only have one? So I made a beeline out to check it out when I got home this morning, about 7 o'clock. And it wasn't there. I have no fear of what I saw, just still in a bit of disbelief. I will be taking my phone out with me to try to snap a picture of it if it comes back. It was spotted on the roof of St. Joseph School/Church, to the south of the bell steeple, just south of the inlaid cross, on the flat part of the roof, above it facing Erie Street, 1525 Erie Street, Racine, Wisconsin, 53402 is the address of the church/school. I'll let you know if it makes a reappearance. So yeah, you can check out all those reports on phantomsandmonsters.com. And now, here's a few reports from the Mothman app that can be downloaded in the App Store on a phone near you. I'm not sure of the date on this report, but it says, "This isn't my story, but my friend's. Years ago, she was at Woodfield Mall in Schaumburg by Chicago and saw a black figure way up in the sky. It was just hovering over her. While it was high up, she says that if it was to come down, it would be about 6 feet. When she told me the story, she described it as a demon fairy. After which, I showed her a photo of Mothman, and she confirmed that's what the creature looked like." This one says, "I have my dad's Mothman story to tell. He was on his way home from work in Northeast Ohio, all excited to go to Myrtle Beach later on that day to see his family with my mom. He looked up and was like, 'Is that the Mothman? Sweet.' Because he too is a cryptid lover, like myself. He said it was like he blacked out for a second, and he saw them in a car accident on their way home in the mountains. His bright idea was to cheat the Mothman and not sit in the back of the car during the trip. He didn't think anything of it, didn't tell anyone, and went on with the trip. He was driving home and looked at my mom when he said, 'I couldn't sleep in the hotel last night. I'm going to pull over and take a nap in the back.' Little did he know, 2 hours later, they were going to be in a car accident on their way home. It wasn't bad, thank God, but it was still real. He told my mom when they went home. In Dixonville, Pennsylvania, right outside Marion Center, I witnessed what can only be the Mothman walking across a driveway. It stood about 6 feet tall with wings. Its head looked like a fly's head, and it had huge red eyes. I turned around to take a picture because I was in disbelief, but it had already disappeared. This happened in 2014. I was in the Navy and stationed in Sugar Grove, West Virginia. We run patrols around the base's perimeter, or used to, since the base was decommissioned. And one area would take us deep into the woods. One night the road was being patrolled by an experienced patrolman who was driving down the road in our modified trucks when he saw something red eyes about 6 to 8 feet tall and leathery wings with a sprinkling of dust-like substance. He tried to hit it with a vehicle since he was so afraid, but he missed and ended up driving back to the base and didn't stop until he arrived at our post. He was white as a sheet and shaking, so we had our M4s ready in case a threat was lurking nearby. He told us the story, and we kind of laughed it off, thinking he was messing with us. He went and filed an official incident report about the incident. He wasn't messing with us. Filing a false report carries prison time. Don't know if it's Mothman, but something was in those woods that night. We got this one on a Facebook message from our friend Matt. I seen him standing about 60 yards away, I want to say, off the road. I was on my way to Morgantown, West Virginia from northeast Ohio. I was with my buddy and he was driving. I looked over to the right about 60 yards out and I seen a big winged muscle man creature thing. I don't remember all the features. I did this probably back around 2008. I knew it was a bad thing or an angel or something, but it had those evil red eyes. It noticed me looking at him and looked right into my soul. It was standing at a makeshift table out of like a hay bale, eating what looked like flesh. I don't know, some kind of animal. It was ripping the carcass laying on the makeshift table of hay. He had an extremely muscular chest and arms, probably about 6 feet tall, I'm saying. I don't remember. I remember his wings in my head, but I know I've seen him, and I know who it was. I can't remember facial features either. It's only those red eyes. But he looked at me, and he's like, I could kill you right now. I was scared to death, afraid to tell the driver anything about it because I was afraid that he would stop and want to look at it. I just feel like I needed to get out of there as soon as possible. You ever watch Jeepers Creepers 2? The creature in that movie is exactly what I saw. I swear, 100% exactly. I saw this before the movie came out. So thank you, Matt, for that cool story. I don't know what I would do in a situation like that. I would be pretty scared too. That's about all the more recent Mothman stories we have this week. I sure hope you've enjoyed this epic dive into the Mothman. Over 4 hours. So one thing I've learned about Mothman during this whole series of Mothman is that he seems to have some kind of a bad neck or something because he would walk around in the 60s with his head cocked to the side. So he's had some kind of a neck injury. If there's a topic you'd like to hear on the show, or if you'd like to be a guest, send an email to endarkplacespod@hotmail.com. Join us again next week when we'll be talking about some creepy urban legends. God bless you, and see you next week.